Fame isn't just a spotlight, it's a shadow, a polished mask that hides the truth. Beneath the flashing lights, the smiles, and the luxury lies something far darker. While the world worships perfection, behind closed doors there are graves. Graves not all dug by time. Some were shaped by obsession, some by betrayal, and some by the very people who once stood by their side, pretending to care. These weren't accidents, they weren't overdoses, these were murders, calculated, brutal, and concealed. This is Green Vault. We don't follow the noise. We follow what got buried, stories the spotlight missed, and the silence that followed. Let's begin. 19. Gianni Versace. Murder on the marble steps. Gianni Versace didn't just design clothes. He transformed fashion into a powerful language, turning boldness into unapologetic art. His name became synonymous with elegance, strength, and invincibility. But on July 15, 1997, his life was stolen in an instant, much like another revolutionary voice, Tupac Shakur, both silenced by forces too fearful to let their power grow. And in Miami, waiting for Versace was Andrew Cunanan, already a fugitive, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. Without warning, Cunanan raised his gun and fired twice. In that fleeting moment, the man who had redefined fashion was gone. No answers, no closure, just the cold, unyielding truth of a world unwilling to explain its actions. To this day, the question still burns, why him? Why then? 18. Tupac Amaru Shakur. A target in the desert. Tupac wasn't just a rapper. He was a revolutionary, a poet for the oppressed. His music was more than sound. It was a call for change, an anthem for a generation. A battle cry for the oppressed, an anthem for those silenced by a world that wouldn't listen. On September 7, 1996, in the scorching heat of Las Vegas, that voice was silenced. A white Cadillac pulled up beside him, and in an instant, 4 shots rang out, cutting through the heart of a generation. Tupac fought for 6 excruciating days, but on September 13, at just 25 years old, he was gone. Was it gang retaliation, betrayal from within, or something darker? The forces that feared his voice? The truth remains hidden, and the questions continue to echo, haunting the heart of the mystery. What's your theory? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's piece this mystery together. 17. Rebecca Schaeffer, a knock that shouldn't have happened. At just 21, Rebecca Schaeffer was on the verge of stardom. Her success wasn't handed to her, it was earned. She was a rising star, the world at her feet. But on July 18, 1989, that future was stolen in an instant. Robert John Bardo, a fan turned stalker, tracked her down. When Rebecca opened the door, expecting a package, she found a gun aimed at her chest. 1 shot. And just like that, her life ended. Her murder sparked nationwide change, leading to new laws on stalking. But for Rebecca, it was too late. She wasn't living recklessly, she was living openly. And that openness? It cost her life. Could she have been saved? Let us know what you think in the comments. 16. Phil Hartman, laughter silenced. Phil Hartman was a comedian whose lines became timeless. He wasn't just a voice behind characters, he was a beloved family man who made millions laugh. But behind the laughter, a darkness simmered, unseen by all, until it erupted one fateful night. On May 28, 1998, as Phil lay asleep, his wife Bryn, a woman spiraling into addiction and jealousy, picked up a gun. 1 shot, then another. By morning, the laughter was gone. Phil's death, a tragic punchline, shattered the illusion of sitcom perfection. The man who made the world laugh was silenced by the person who should have protected him. 15. Marvin Gaye, killed by blood, not a stranger. Marvin Gaye wasn't just a voice, he was the anthem of hope and struggle. His music transformed pain into power, vulnerability into strength. But behind the sweet melody was a man trapped in a violent family dynamic. On April 1, 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, a fight with his father ended in tragedy. Marvin Sr., using the gun his son had given him for protection, fired a single shot. Marvin died in his mother's arms. This wasn't just a family dispute, it was the devastating climax of years of unresolved pain. The world didn't just lose Marvin's life, it lost the future of his evolving genius. 14. Christopher Wallace, Bullets in the Silence. Christopher Wallace, better known as Biggie Smalls, wasn't just a rapper, he was the voice of a generation. A poet of the streets, painting life's raw truths with unflinching honesty. On March 9, 1997, after leaving a party in Los Angeles, Biggie sat in the passenger seat of a black SUV. At a red light, a Chevy Impala pulled up beside him. Without warning, 4 shots rang out. One of them struck his heart. He was pronounced dead hours later, at just 24 years old. There were witnesses, there were cameras, yet no one was ever held accountable. Theories swirl, gang rivalries, revenge, corruption, but the truth remains elusive, the answers just out of reach. Biggie's death was more than the loss of an artist, it was the silencing of a voice that turned struggle into poetry, and while his story ended, others continued to feel the weight of his absence. 13. Sam Cooke, a legend lost in a motel room. His voice could calm a storm or start one. Sam Cooke didn't just sing. He stirred something deeper. With gospel roots and a soul full of fire, he became the sound of a movement. A Change Is Gonna Come wasn't crafted in a studio, it was carved from history, grief, and hope. But on December 11, 1964, that voice was silenced in a motel room in Los Angeles. Shot in the chest by manager Bertha Franklin, who claimed self-defense. No trial, no autopsy, just a story wrapped up too neatly and a legacy left with questions no courtroom ever answered. The music faded, leaving behind lingering questions that never found closure. Was it truly self-defense? The voice that ignited a movement was extinguished too soon, robbed of the future it was meant to shape? 12. Sharon Tate, the cult that butchered the American dream. Sharon Tate's life was just beginning. A rising star in Hollywood, she had everything ahead of her: youth, beauty, love, and a promising career. But on the night of August 9, 1969, that dream was violently stolen. Members of the Manson family, driven by delusions of a coming race war, broke into her home and stabbed her 16 times. Sharon, 8 months pregnant, begged for her baby's life before they ended hers. Sharon Tate's brutal end echoed across Hollywood, shattering dreams in its wake. And just over 25 years later, another rising star, Selena Quintanilla Perez, would fall victim to a similar fate, leaving the world to mourn another unrealized future. 11. Selena Quintanilla Perez, shot by loyalty. Selena Quintanilla Perez was living proof that dreams could belong to anyone. She didn't rise, she soared. With every performance, she brought Tejano music to the global stage and carried the hopes of a generation on her shoulders. Young Latinas didn't just admire her, they saw themselves in her. March 31, 1995, everything changed. She confronted Yolanda Saldivar, her fan club president and trusted friend, about missing money. Minutes later, Yolanda pulled a gun and shot Selena in the back as she tried to leave. Bleeding and alone, Selena staggered to the lobby and, with her final breath, named her killer. She was 23. Selena's voice that once filled arenas was extinguished in a hotel lobby. And with her, the future she was destined to change was silenced, leaving the world to wonder what could have been. 10. XXX Tentacion, ambushed in broad daylight. José Duane Ricardo Onfroid, known to the world as XXX Tentacion, wasn't your typical artist. His music cut deep, raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically vulnerable. He gave millions an outlet, a mirror for their own struggles. But his life, marked by conflict, evolution, and intensity, was always balanced on a knife's edge. On June 18, 2018, after leaving a motorcycle dealership in Florida, Jace's life was cut short. A sudden ambush, a brief struggle, and then gunfire. The attackers claimed his life in broad daylight. The police called it a robbery. But this was no simple theft. This was a message. Jace's movement, his voice, his revolution. They had to be stopped. If you've made it this far, you're one of us. Subscribe to Grimvault for more stories the world tried to bury. 9. Nipsey Hussle, gunned down at his own store. Nipsey Hussle didn't just rise, he reached back. He took his success and poured it into his neighborhood, not for headlines, but for healing. A voice for ownership, growth, and generational change. The Marathon clothing store was more than a brand, it was a blueprint. But on March 31, 2019, that vision was cut short. Outside the very store he built, Nipsey was gunned down by someone he once knew, Eric Holder Jr. The shots came quick, final. He was just 33. He gave his community a map forward and lost his life to someone who chose not to follow it. 8. Jam Master Jay, shot between the beats. Jam Master Jay didn't just move the crowd, he moved the culture. A pioneer of sound, a bridge between generations. October 30th, 2002, Queens, New York. Inside his recording studio, surrounded by friends, two men walked in. Calm, confident. Words were exchanged, then a single shot to the head. Jay collapsed mid-conversation. No shouting, no fight, no sign of robbery, just one life, gone. For years, the case lay dormant. No arrests, no answers, just whispers of a drug deal gone wrong. In 2020, two men were finally charged. But the wound never closed, not for his family, not for hip-hop. Jam Master Jay gave his life to a genre that never stopped playing. But when his own beat dropped, the world didn't hear justice. It heard static. 7. John Lennon, a legend lost to obsession. John Lennon's message was one of peace and love, a vision for a better world. But that very message made him a target. On December 8, 1980, Lennon was returning to his New York City home with Yoko Ono when Mark David Chapman approached him. Chapman, a fan turned obsessive stalker, had spent hours waiting for the right moment. When it came, he pulled out a gun and shot Lennon in the back. As Lennon lay dying, Chapman didn't flee. He sat on the curb, reading The Catcher in the Rye, a symbol of his disturbed need to be remembered. Lennon, the man who had taught the world about peace, was gone, and the world never quite recovered from the blow. 6. Christina Grimmie, fame interrupted. Christina Grimmie didn't climb the industry ladder, she built her own. With just a webcam and pure talent, she turned bedroom performances into global recognition. Her voice wasn't just powerful, it was personal. Millions saw her not as a star, but as someone they believed in. On June 10, 2016, everything changed. After a show in Orlando, Christina was doing what she loved most, meeting fans, smiling, hugging. Then Kevin Loibel, a man obsessed, stepped forward. 3 shots, chaos, her brother rushed in, but it was already too late. She was just 22, a promising future cut short before its peak. And the music never felt the same after that. 5. Jamal Khashoggi, truth was his crime. October 2, 2018, Istanbul. Jamal Khashoggi entered the Saudi consulate to collect paperwork for his wedding. He never walked out. Inside, a coordinated team of 15 operatives using aliases and diplomatic cover was waiting. No scuffle, no struggle, just silence, manufactured for murder. Khashoggi was suffocated, his body dismembered, There was no grave, no closure, just denials, delays, and shifting official stories. At first, the Saudi government denied it. Then came claims of a rogue operation. Finally, an admission. Khashoggi was killed inside, but those who orchestrated it, untouched. According to U.S. intelligence, the mission had approval from the highest levels of Saudi leadership. But oil shields more than just economies. It muffles justice. Khashoggi's weapon was truth, and for that, his voice was erased. Because in some regimes, truth doesn't just challenge power, it threatens its survival. 4. Peter Ivers. The host left in darkness. March 3, 1983, downtown Los Angeles. Peter Ivers was found in bed, face bludgeoned, skull crushed. Blood soaked the sheets. His harmonium untouched. No forced entry, no sign of theft, just darkness and silence. As host of New Wave Theater, Ivers gave a stage to chaos. Punk bands, political outcasts, voices the mainstream ignored. But his world was unstable, electric, fringed with danger. Police questioned friends, lovers, artists. Theories bloomed. Envy, obsession, revenge. But nothing stuck. The hammer was real. Everything else? Speculation. Peter Ivers let the underground speak. But when he was silenced, the scene stayed quiet. 3. Dorothy Stratton, a star extinguished too soon. Dorothy Stratton's rise felt cinematic. Small-town waitress to Playmate of the Year in under 2 years. Hollywood saw a star. One man saw possession. On August 14, 1980, in the West LA home they once shared, her estranged husband and former manager Paul Snyder shot Dorothy in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. Then he turned the gun on himself. She was just 20. The headlines called it a tragedy, but it wasn't blind rage. It was control collapsing into calculated violence. Dorothy didn't fall victim to the trappings of fame. She was shattered by a man who couldn't bear the thought of losing her, and even as the cameras faded, her tragic end became a painful truth. Sometimes, walking away is the most dangerous act a woman can make. 2. George Reeves. Superman's fall wasn't fiction. June 16, 1959, Benedict Canyon. George Reeves, TV's original Superman, was found with a bullet in his head. The official ruling? Suicide. But the crime scene fought back. No fingerprints, no powder burns, no witnesses to the sound. Guests were downstairs. No one heard a thing. Reeves had just reignited his career, but off-screen he was tangled in a web of scandal, a powerful MGM executive, the executive's wife, and threats that whispered louder than press releases. His mother didn't believe the suicide, neither did the fans. And Hollywood didn't ask questions. George Reeves wore a cape on screen. But in the end, all he had was a coffin, and a mystery no one wanted solved. 1. Maria Franco, shot for speaking out. Marielle Franco was a force in Brazilian politics, a black queer city councilwoman from Rio's favelas who spoke truth to power. She fought for the poor, the marginalized, and victims of state violence. A human rights advocate who knew oppression firsthand, she became a symbol of resistance in a country where dissent is often dangerous. March 14, 2018, Rio de Janeiro. Marielle and her driver were ambushed on the street. 9 bullets tore through their car. No warning, no chance. The ammunition was traced to a police stockpile, and the suspects had ties to paramilitary groups backed by political influence. Protests erupted across Brazil, but justice stalled. Marielle wasn't just murdered, she was erased by a system she dared to challenge. In Brazil, her truth had a cost, and she paid it with her life. These stories didn't fade, they were buried. And what's buried still breathes. At Grimvolt, we don't chase shock, we chase truth. Subscribe, not for the algorithm, for the memory. Because silence protects killers, but memory protects the truth.